Topic one. In the capital of Canada, I'm told, I don't really care. There is a massive protest demonstration led by truckers. It's called the Freedom Convoy, and the participants have used their vehicles to block city streets and blare their horns. The protest has been linked to far-right actors. Ottawa's mayor has declared a state of emergency and is ready to deploy police forces. Residents have said they are scared to leave their homes. What should the police response be? Should they give the protesters room to make themselves heard? Or should they crack down on lawlessness? Do you think the response from the police would change if the races of the participants were different? Yep, we're talking about the Freedom Convoy. You guys have all heard it. It's like a meme at this point, I think. But yeah, it's a thing that's happening. Yeah. But I think I missed something. No, I didn't. I'm the missed show. Okay. So we'll get started with introductions. We'll go with Wiggle.
Yeah, I'd say like I want to preface that like I'm not Canadian, so like anything I say, I want to be clear, because I hate it when Canadians tell me about what things are going on in the United States. I'm not gonna know what's going on, so whatever I'm saying is from the purview of reading information. I don't live there. I don't know the situation of Canadians in Ottawa,
Right.
what they think about like the
Right.
police.
Wellspring.
But outside of that, I'd say that coming from what I understand of America, I think like I was largely wrong about my ideas about the pandemic and like what divides us in America. At this point in time, I believe that liberals don't actually care about like the mask mandates or vaccines or what have you. It's more about belief and like your institutions being correct, and the idea that it's easy. The liberals want something that's easy. They want to go along with it as long as it makes sense. And I believe that conservatives have taken this stance that I didn't believe at first, but now I believe, which is just not that I personally, but I believe that they believe this, is that personally they think this is like an erosion of something. There's an erosion of like a certain virtue of or value that's happening when you impose a mandate. And I think this gets conflated whenever you read these newspapers, is that they're catering to like whatever you think on the left. They want you to see these individuals and think, oh, they're against vaccines and they're against this or what have you. When I think it's more indicative of them being against a removal of choice, like a force, which I don't agree with, but at least I can sit here and understand where they're coming from instead of ignoring that truth. I also find it's really interesting that whenever there's like some sort of like revolt or some sort of like little protest that expands, this is not a little protest, it's pretty big. There's always this idea of splintering it from like a hegemonic force, like a government. So in this instance, they come after these people and they say, look, there's swastikas, Confederate flags. It's like all the enemies of the past DLC come out, and they take this idea that these white people are racist. They know what they want, and what they want is something like terrible. And I think like this is kind of what they did with Black Lives Matter in the United States, right? Is they took this opposite approach. Is they looked at people that are protesting about something they disliked, and they said, oh, these are angry black people that don't even know what they want. And if they don't even really know if it's appeasable or it's something, and they don't know what they want, and that's how you're supposed to view them, as angry and black. And then when it's these white individuals that have these beliefs, all of a sudden it's, oh, they know exactly what they want, and what they want is racist, and what they want is this. But I don't really think that's the case for the vast majority, and that's it.
Thank you so much. Scott, go, and please be slightly more concise than Wiggle. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so this topic has about 10 questions in it that could all be topics for a panel. So it makes it kind of difficult to answer because it's such an open-ended topic, but not just open-ended. You asked several questions that need to be answered. So I guess in terms of the idea of them being tied to far-right actors, or, you know, the conflating of their ideas as racist, I'm not one to try and reinvent the wheel. I think Pierre Poilievre kind of already said it best when he said, quote, just because Justin Trudeau dressed up in racist costumes so many times he can't remember them all doesn't mean every member of the Liberal Party is a racist. Or when he said just because he tried to help a corporation avoid prosecution for stealing from some of Africa's poorest people doesn't mean that every member of the Liberal Party is a racist. I think, trying to disparage an entire movement because there's a couple of crazy people or a couple of people with symbols that you don't like is no different than when conservatives try and say that like every Black Lives Matter protest was like Antifa or like, terrorists that wanted to burn down buildings just because some of them were doing that. And we got, from the media over and over and over again, we got mostly peaceful protests while standing in front of burning buildings. But, now it's, we saw a swastika in there somewhere and it totally wasn't a federal agent or a Boogaloo boy. It's representative of the entire movement. Now, moving forward, what I find really interesting about this, and I think should kind of preface all the other stuff that we'll talk about, is I love that the left loves to talk about working class people until working class people actually voice their opinions, right? Like the left loves to talk about how they care about the poor and they care about working class. And then you have these truckers coming out and trying to stop an authoritarian government that has been violently attacking them for years. And then they say, oh, well, this is ridiculous. It's, the whole country hates it. Well, 77% of Canadians support the Freedom Convoy. So that ought to tell you something, because 23% don't support it, which is also the exact same percentage of Canadians that are young Earth creationists. So if you're against this convoy, just know that you're in the same minority percentage-wise as people that don't believe in evolution. That's how fringe your idea is. And I think, we'll get into more stuff and we'll just leave it at that. If you don't support the Freedom Convoy, you don't give a fuck about the working poor, and you are and you're in the same minority of individuals that support young Earth creationism.
That's the no and concise. Thank you so much. Okay, now let's go to half-baked.
Well, it's kind of your fault with the topic.
I'll be real quick. I'm concerned that this argument is getting conflated with these truckers being anti-vax when in fact they're just anti-mandate. I think that will end up being part of the discussion. I do think it's interesting that there's only been like 60 criminal investigations opened.
Boogs are not libertarians.
Post arrest, so it seems like it's a pretty peaceful demonstration. They are being pretty fucking annoying with the honking and shit, but what are you gonna do? That's their right to do so. And then if people are committing crimes, arrest them. But other than that, I don't have a problem with them doing this shit.
No, but it is a good way.
And I do think it's good that it's going to be up on the ballot coming up here shortly for them to vote on the vaccine mandates.
So much erudite.
Sure, yeah, I'll be super
quick.
No.
Computer
I
Carnage.
think mostly this convoy is a really good test of people's level of consistency.
He said
in their
that
positions.
Marxism was on the decline.
I think if you have like really big issues with it, for certain reasons, you should make sure that you've approached other potential protests with a similar lens. But I'm big on consistency. Overall, I will say criminals are bad. Doing criminal crimes, bad. Never supporting that. And I think it's really important that protest leaders denounce criminal actions, Nazi flags, all those things. I think it's fundamental to keeping the integrity of a protest. I don't know if I necessarily care one way or the other about the protest specifically. However, I think it is within any group's purview to protest. But I think that the line that's being drawn right now with the Canadian protest is that the question is, when is it considered unlawful if not tons of crimes are happening, but like quality of life for all those around it is markedly diminished?
Okay. Joe Lewis.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a more dedicated effort in preventative measures, considering that there has been examples of extremism infiltrating these groups and the message, and then just like heavily documented evidence of different acts of violence and criminality. And then on top of that, like even there's like the part within the GoFundMe, because GoFundMe said based on their actions on there, they relinquished the funds or suspended them. I personally don't agree with that, but maybe we can get into like specifics of why I disagree there. Generally, I think as soon as possible, Canada needs to close off Wellington Street, which is right in front of Parliament Hill, and create a at the very least, a no parking or standing within the red zone, which may already exist. I'd have to double check on the semantics about how red zones navigate. But generally speaking, I think they have to get the trucks out of Wellington Hill, leave it exclusively for essential travel, and then also creating no stopping and standing in
they made honking
essential
illegal,
businesses.
hilariously.
So I would rope in hospitals, schools, homeless shelters, government buildings, federal monuments, and stuff like that. Just so that there's no vandalism at these places. I can't really speak towards like the police role as it relates to race, since I'm not Canadian. And the relationship between police bias in the States is vastly different than what we're dealing with or what Canadians are dealing with. So maybe somebody who's Canadian can maybe speak on that a little bit more.
Not Canadian, thank God for that. All right, let's move on to Stardust.
So I think, as others have said here, everybody has the right to protest. It's probably one of the more integral parts of participating in, like a country's politics. Obviously, acts of violence should be condemned, and if there is a situation in which emergency vehicles are having trouble getting through, we should alleviate that. But I did want to push back a little bit on what Scott was saying, on that this convoy is representing like working class truckers. It's been condemned by trucking industry groups, and the Canadian Trucking Alliance has reported that a large number of protesters had no connection to trucking. And I like, while I'm all for the again, I'm all for the right to protest. You know, there are other working class groups that are affected by this. You okay, buddy? There are plenty of other working class groups
muted
that are
because
affected.
it's your intro.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. I think there are other working class groups that are affected by this. So, you know, it is important to pay attention to that. There have been medical workers who've been advised to not wear scrubs on the way to work because of the animosity that some of the protesters have towards them. Other than that, I have no problem with people protesting. So I think that, you know, go ahead, protest. Yeah.
Vic, please.
I'm going to repeat a lot of what's been said. I think that more important than what is being protested is protecting the right to protest. And when we talk about issues or groups that we may fundamentally disagree with, and we may fundamentally think are wrong or morally bankrupt, we should still protect their right to protest, because when we do that, we protect the societal norms, and we protect the privilege it is, and the fundamental right we should have as citizens, either of Canada or of America, or really anywhere in the world, to be able to voice our opinions.
These aren't working class people. The trucking industry
those opinions are something that people find distasteful and offensive. And I think that while I think it's a little silly what they're doing, I support their right to do that. I think what GoFundMe did was terrible, and I think that has a lot of connotations going forward that we need to really be careful of, and it's a giant red flag to me going forward about GoFundMe just suspending their funding and issuing refunds to everyone. That was handled terribly poorly. When it comes to the government and how the government's handling it, I mean, as far as I can tell, and again, I don't live in Canada, as far as I can tell, mostly they've been fine. I mean, they're annoyed, they're mad, they've issued arrests when violence occurred, and I think that's within their purview too. And to the question, would it be different if the races
Amazon
were
workers
well,
were
we don't
treated
have to
great.
ask that
Jeff
question if we
Bezos
think,
just said
because
so
there
on
have
Facebook.
been many protests where Indigenous people have blocked rail lines and blocked transportation networks and things in order to protest how they've been treated, and they were handled fairly well by the government up there. I don't think anything was too heavy-handed. So all in all, I think this acting as if it's the end of the world, that this group is protesting.
I'm using that for the record. Computer carnage.
Groups outside of the country have funded it. I mean, the politicians there really want to cut off funding from outside of their country. I don't think they want that. I think a lot of them get money from out international sources. So that's what I think. No.
Judy.
So the questions you asked were, what should the police response be? I think if the protests are illegal, they should be broken up. If people are delivering fuel to them or helping them out with food and whatever, like they've had reports of, those people should probably be fined.
Yeah, I know, Wellspring. I'm about to tear this entire fucking thing up.
The next question was, should they give the protesters room to make themselves heard, or should they crack down on the lawlessness? I think they've been heard, right? I think everybody knows, what the fuck they're there for. Unfortunately,
we're not doing an open
people in
panel
Ottawa,
yet,
they can definitely hear these fucking truckers, right? All the fucking time, right? Almost 90% of Ottawa wants them gone. The vast majority of Canadians support more restrictions for the unvaccinated, not less. So they've been heard. People disagree with them. True. Break up the protests, impound the trucks, and send them home.
To the panel.
All right.
So,
my God.
Just real quick.
Go ahead.
Just real quick to Doobie's point that they're being disruptive to the people in Ottawa. Isn't that the point of protest? To be disruptive? That's how it's effective, is when you disrupt things. And so, to a point,
but so you have a right to protest. Okay, you have a right to protest and to be loud and annoying, but given that this is an illegal protest and what they're actually doing is blockading a lot of streets that people need to go down to get to work and live their lives, this is not a legal protest. Right? This is not within their right to protest.
So a couple of
you
things.
guys love democracy so much. The vast majority of people in that city want them gone. The disruption to their lives is not worth these people's right to scream about how angry they are that they need to get vaccinated. And the vast majority of the country supports more
no, they don't. That's a lie. That's a lie.
That is not a lie.
That's a lie. Argus Read poll. Argus Read poll is showing 54% of Canadians want to get rid of all mandates.
Okay,
wait, hold on.
The Convoy. Okay, yeah. So the Canadian Trucking Alliance said that there is a large portion of these protesters that are not associated with trucking at all.
Yeah, and Jeff Bezos just went on Facebook and said that the Amazon workers are being treated greatly.
I wasn't finished. Look, I'm just saying that I support their right to protest, right? But if it does interfere with like emergency vehicles coming through, or if there are frontline workers that are being harassed, then there is an issue. That's not true.
There. The Freedom Convoy has been training people and has individuals going through to make sure that all emergency vehicles are getting through.
Okay, that's good then. Yeah, but there have been several. I think it was a couple of emergency vehicles were attacked, and then there were like advisories given out to like medical workers to like not wear scrubs outside because of they'll get harassed or whatever. So.
Yeah, I mean a lot of people live in a fear-based
and the big
bubble.
problem is the noise. The big problem is the noise and the disruption to people's lives on a day-to-day basis. These protests could continue, and then they could enforce a noise restriction, right? The same way that they treat like people's like sound systems in their car or having a party at night and being too loud. It's as simple as doing something like that. Hey, if you guys want to stay in this spot and continue to be here and be a presence here, that's fine. But you can't make fucking massive amounts of noise disrupting the day-to-day lives of people out of Ottawa.
Wait, but hasn't the protest been declared illegal?
Who gives a fuck?
There's nothing moving in the direction of being illegal. He has not declared it objectively illegal.
They've made the honking illegal.
Well, they're injunctioning it because, to be clear about the honking, just so people know, at the ground level, it's 100 decibels pretty much constantly, and in people's homes that live around it, it's about 95 decibels. You can get ear damage within 50 minutes of those decibels. So it's not just like annoying noise; it's like actually like damaging. If you have things like any sort of like ear injury, so like if you have a cochlear injury, you'd like if I lived there, I would literally have to evacuate because it would be like I have an inner ear injury. I couldn't fucking be there. So it's like it's a little bit more than just like annoying honking, and that's the part where we're saying this is starting to border on like illegal because of that.
So what about the state?
Like harassing people trying to go to work.
What about the people who've committed suicide from these fucking lockdowns? What about the authoritarian state? This is violence committed upon the people of Canada, and they're fucking fighting back.
They're not protesting the lockdowns.
The lockdowns and mandates.
They're
Ottawa
protesting the
paramedics
mandates.
announced that
protesting
protesters threw rocks at
What are you
ambulance.
talking about?
I mean, even if the sound is not, and it sounds like the sound is a very big issue. Even if we take the sound out of it, right? There have been instances that these paramedics were attacked. They had rocks thrown at them. They were called racial slurs.
Yeah, that's what happens when you have massive protests. You know, like our cities burned for 15 months from BLM protests, right? It's part of what happens in massive protests.
Yeah, but we should speak out and say like
we should be speaking out against the state.
Leaders of that protest need to say that we denounce this, right? It's important that the leaders of the movement denounce the Nazi flag. Like that was important for them to do.
Come on here, like
because they're trying the media's trying to use. No, the media's trying to use its power to paint them, and then wants nothing but fucking soundbite clips, and they know the media is their enemy, so they're telling them to go fuck themselves because the truckers have enough power, and the farmers that are breaking through have enough power.
All the working class medical workers, then
what kind of perverse democracy is that? Of like, we need to step up and we need to protest the protesters.
Yeah, the medical worker, the medical.
You just announce it. Like all you need to do is police your own. It's
all you need to do is police your own.
Just listen to me. Please, just let me talk. Please, just let me talk.
Erudite, please.
Okay, it is fundamental that protesters do their best to disown those that they don't agree with because it makes their movement more meaningful and it makes it have better charge. If they actually want to like change all these mandates, which I'm not even necessarily agreeing with them, what they need to do, it's the same critiques I've had of movements on either side. Denounce the bad actors that don't represent your group. If there's one group that I'm pretty sure it was only one Nazi flag, but there's been quite a few Confederate flags, just denounce it. Just like those
they kicked that guy out.
Just go on Facebook, and I've been trolling through their Facebook and their Twitter for hours and their TikTok to try to see if they would ever call out these individuals to say, hey, just by the way, we don't stand by the assaults.
They kicked them out.
And that hasn't really happened.
They kicked out the Nazi flag guy.
We can look at the BLM protests too. Like when there's rioting, I think we would be consistent and say that they should denounce that type of rioting, right? But if there's violence being committed, right? If there are hate speech being broadcasted, if there are
please define hate speech if you're going to use silly terms.
Okay, all right. So if there are hate symbols flying around, then they should denounce that.
They kicked them out.
This is laughable, though. This is just a liberal excuse of like, all right, if you did this thing, and I imagine if they did, you guys wouldn't care. You'd go on to the next thing. Like, what does being a Nazi have to do with like protesting against like a mandate? Like, you guys will find anything to stick on and be like, you should have done this to legitimize your
Wig, come on. I said at the very beginning of my statement that I support the right to protest.
But you added a but. And that but is where lies every liberal.
Of course, there's always allowed to be caveats to any position. That's how you introduce nuance into the conversation.
Nuance is the thing.
You guys want to go and get a
package deal politics that if we accept one thing, we have to swallow it whole, every single bit of it. We can say and be internally consistent and be correct that it's okay to protest. It's good to protest and have your voice heard, but if you commit violence, that the leaders of that protest, just as a good strategy, just as good optics, taking morality out of it, just as good optics. If you denounce violence, that's an easy win. That's an easy win for you.
Why would you denounce violence?
You're keeping public
Why would you denounce violence?
You guys want a menu for like that. You could choose the protest you want.
Violence is wrong.
No, it's not.
Easy win.
Not when it's defensive.
Wrong is an easy win.
So self-defense is immoral.
How is it defensive if you're throwing
because you've been using the power of you've been again.
That's not
I'm not
defensive.
going. No, listen.
You're actually preventing people from helping
Nope.
people who need
I'm not
that.
going to. I'm not going to let you slander a giant movement by taking one little fucking thing. No, what I'm talking about is the violence from the state against the Canadian fucking people. You guys talk about GoFundMe, but why did GoFundMe do what they did? Why did they do it? Because the police fucking approached them. Okay, the fucking okay, cool. Just throw racism in, racism and everything. Magically, I'm fucking right.
I thought of the paramedics. You're saying it's defensive violence. How is calling somebody slurs?
Okay, so you know what? I watched more than one video of BLM protesters pull out white people from their vehicles and beat the shit out of them and
wrong.
say white things. Therefore, all of BLM is racist, and we don't have to
wrong.
talk about it. BLM's racist. You heard it from Stardust first.
Angry about this. Why are you being so black and white about it?
This is not.
I'm using her own logic in the same way and saying it's fucking stupid.
Scott, I am not disagreeing with you. I would condemn that too, and that's why people should come out and condemn.
No,
those
but you're
things,
condemning.
So
you're
if
trying to
somebody is
condemn
throwing
the
rocks at
protests
paramedics and calling them slurs. We should condemn.
Why are you
that.
lying? Why are you lying?
I don't understand.
You're
What do you mean,
you're
why? What am I lying
now
about?
that I've
Scott,
backed
I
you
know.
into a corner.
Scott.
Now you want to say it's an
You're not.
individual thing that you want to condemn.
Okay.
No.
We're moving forward. We gotta move things along. All right, Half-Baked takes it
How?
in Joe
What
Lewis.
corner?
Scott, I know you're coming at this in the same like the same view of like the tree of liberty needs to be watered with the blood of tyrants type shit.
Patriots and tyrants, yeah.
But that's not what this is. These people aren't facing, the government is not enacting violence upon them. So
yes, they are. They're starving people.
What am I lying about, Scott? That's
And
what
the
I'm
mayor,
lying
the
about.
mayor of Ottawa is intentionally making sure that homeless people die, so that people that are there for the Freedom Convoy can't get into hotels and locking down hotels, and doesn't give a fuck that homeless people in Ottawa actually depend upon those hotels so that they can stay warm. Or the fact that these mandates are getting people to not have jobs.
We're not seeing the homeless
You
people
can't put
committing
food on your
violence.
fucking. If you can't put
Most people
food on
almost
homeless
never
people
use
aren't-
hotels, just to
they're
be
not
clear. Like
committing
That's not true.
Like that's why
But
shelters
I'll
and stuff
let Doobie-
exist.
The shelters was shut down for
say.
COVID
Scott,
multiple
Scott,
times.
What
What
did
are you
I
saying?
lie about? What did
That's
I
not
lie
true.
about, Scott? What did I lie about?
You
I'd like
started
to know.
off your argumentation as a means of attacking the movement as a whole by trying to take individual
No,
things. I
actually
called you out on that,
specifically
and then you
said
tried to
at
pivot.
the beginning of my statement that I support the right for people to protest.
And then you added a
However,
caveat and then attacked the movement
Yes,
by the actions of a few individuals
not
and then
the
painted the
movement.
entire
When
movement
you
that way.
have
I'm not one of your low IQ
emergency
individuals. You're on a
workers,
fucking
I'm
panel.
not one of-
Step
okay,
up.
You can't fucking talk. You can't. No, I'm sorry. I'm not gonna let you bulldoze me. When you prevent emergency workers from providing essential services, yeah, you should condemn that. Just like if the same thing happened at BLM, I would condemn that too. So, I mean.
Okay, let's go to Joe Lewis, Joe Lewis, Doobie, and then Wick. All right. Yeah.
I don't really understand the utility, if you are a protester, to waste time condemning violence within the protest itself. It seems like you should probably spend that time like pushing whatever your propaganda is. And it seems like their demands are really clear. Get rid of vaccine mandates, do away with vaccine passports, and rehire all individuals who were fired due to vaccine compliance. So like if I'm a protester for the Freedom Convoy, I don't see why it's politically advantageous to just condemn violence when that should just
Joe
be
Lewis
the
is
floor.
right.
I don't know why. It just seems like you're just appeasing the liberals when you just say like, oh, like the violence bad. Like no shit, Sherlock, water's wet.
Appeasing the liberals is what keeps like the
status quo.
Status quo. Not the status quo, but the PR, the optics on your side. It's what keeps the positive outlook on your movement going.
Positive outlook at the status quo.
But what is it? What does that matter?
If it's gonna be voted on, you want people to vote in your favor. I don't know how this is like so fucking difficult. If you want people to vote for the end of mandates, you're gonna want to convince people to end the mandates.
I've sat through this for a while now. So like, okay, why haven't the protesters tried to collectively bargain with the unions to try to figure out a process if you're actually looking to rehire individuals who were fired due to vaccine compliance? That's something you have to collaborate with truckers unions, businesses, and stuff like that. So why aren't they spending their political energy doing that? If you're looking to do away vaccine passports and mandates, why hasn't there been any sort of communication with Trudeau and Parliament to try to come to some situation where they have a seat at the table and bargain so that they can leave? That these are things that seem more politically advantageous than trying to just condemn violence. Now I understand that like there is a liberal perspective of like making sure that the things that we see on the internet and the things that we see in mass media are nice and peaceful and we can kumbaya and like suck each other's dick. But like, I think that if I'm in the Freedom Convoy, I'd rather like use my time with the media and use my time talking to the public to just spread the propaganda of getting rid of vaccine mandates, do away with vaccine passports, and rehire individuals, and just make that my messaging. And if you make that messaging clear, then condemning, you don't have to condemn violence because they already have the organization to do so. So I don't know.
Joe Louis, just real quick, they did try and do that, and then Justin Trudeau's like running and hiding and won't talk to them.
Yeah, and the unions distance themselves, I think, out of political reasons.
Yeah,
but
the unions in the industry is not.
Let's go to Doobie and Wick, and then Wickle.
Yeah, so I think we can all agree that, given that there are thousands of people there, if a handful of them attacks some first aid workers or yelled racial slurs, right, it doesn't really paint the whole movement as racist, right? If one of them had a Nazi flag, it doesn't mean that it doesn't really affect the message that they're putting out. So I think I agree with Scott with that. Not fully agree, but we can kind of set that aside. It's been addressed. They obviously don't support that stuff, or the leaders don't support it. The majority of the people there aren't Nazis or racists or whatever. So I think we can kind of set that aside for now. But what I'm wondering is do you guys think that it's reasonable to expect that the government will comply with their demands, given that they're blockading this area, right? They're slowing down traffic in this city. They're making life hell for people living there. The people want them gone. And they vowed to stay there, and they have millions of dollars to do it now, for as long as it takes for all the restrictions to be lifted, right? So I don't think that's a reasonable demand, first off, and I don't think it's reasonable to expect the government to do that, right? So at some point, right, I think you need to accept that they've been heard, and now they need to go home, right? So whether we've crossed, I think they've crossed that point already, but I'm not Canadian, so I don't really give a fuck what happens in Canada. But if this were happening in the United States, we're far past the point where these people need to be broken up, right? Their trucks need to be impounded, and they need to be sent home. Simple.
Yeah.
Right. So
I can summarize your point for you, Doobie, real quick. Obey.
I'm wondering. Yeah. Obey.
Shut up and obey the state.
Yes. So Scott, I'm wondering, how long would you let them sit there? How long do you think it's reasonable for them to be, sitting there with their fucking horns?
I'll answer it this way. I'm excited and hoping that the rumors are true that they're going to block off the Nova Scotia port and shut down the economy to the fucking country until the government obeys. I hope Canada's GDP fucking plummets until the state learns their fucking lesson.
Okay, so at that point, when if they do that, and the government does break up the protests, does start arresting,
I think they should defend themselves violently.
Does anybody?
That's what they should do.
Sure,
they should have their firearms, and if the police attempt to break them up, they should shoot back
and fight the police, of course.
Absolutely.
So does anybody else here agree with that position?
Not at all.
I think it's laughable to think from the perspective of, I want to put a time limit on this. This is how you should maintain. This is the best PR move. It's like a bunch of Elizabeth Warren people. Like what the fuck? These are angry people that are protesting, and then we're all sitting in our homes going well, actually, the best way for them to get what they want in the electoral process is if they condemn this. They do this. They're angry people. They're angry. If you've ever worked in customer service, you understand how irrational, angry people can be. They have a clear idea in mind of what they want.
Wait, so what? We're just gonna fuck over people who need like emergency services because of that. That's just gonna be.
What the fuck are you talking about, Stardust? We already talked about that.
This protest should be able to go as long as they fucking want, as long as they're doing it in a peaceful and reasonable manner. The problem is that for some goddamn reason, Scott wants to go to the far end of let's fucking commit offensive violence on the state because of these
started it.
Mandates.
It's self-defense.
And then on the other side, it's well, yeah, we're not going to shut these protests down because they have a right to protest. I don't give a fuck if they're out there for the next 30 years. As long as they're doing it in a reasonable and peaceful manner, they have the right to do so.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Why don't the people in Ottawa have the right to live their lives without this disruption?
That's what I just said. I said as long as you're doing it in a reasonable way, which would infer that you're doing it.
Which is not what they're doing right now.
No, I know, but you could adjust it, and you could like people were saying, open up the lanes right in front of Parliament so they can push stuff through. Obviously, if there's emergency vehicles, if emergency vehicles aren't moving, they should be impounded and the owners arrested. There's a lot of things that you could do without going to the extreme of, okay, shut this fucking protest down.
They tried. Just for the record, they did try.
We're acting like there's only two options here. Let them protest forever and commit some sort of violent revolution, or we have to shut it down immediately, and we cannot We cannot allow them to go on in any way, shape, or form. And that's not true at all. This is just so a weird kind of take here. And I do want to push back a lot against what Joe Lewis said. Like, you can do both. You can condemn violence while using that to propagandize, and propaganda is fucking important. And propaganda it works. And if you do it right and correctly, you will have a more successful movement. You could do it poorly and still have some success. You can do it well and still not have a lot of success. But it is a necessary but not sufficient part to any sort of movement that they are able to get the populace on their side, because in a democracy, that's how policy works. That's how laws get written, is we vote on them. And if you can get a plurality of votes, then you want to do that, because that is what gets things done in America, and I assume Canada. I am not familiar with their parliamentary system, and to act as if it's okay for a small minority of people, even if they feel that they're being unheard, to commit violence and like shoot at cops and shit like that. That's we do not want that.
Self-defense.
The government has the government has the right and the authority and the right and the responsibility to protect its citizens. And if a small group of citizens is causing real harm to the larger portion of the populace, the government needs
you sound like MSNBC right now.
Do I get to respond to that, or
Joe Lewis? Joe Lewis can respond, and then we'll go to DB, who desperately has his hands up. Okay.
Is that what he has? I was not sure what's going on there.
I don't think protesters should appease liberal propaganda, because liberals get upset that things get a little bit shaky and violent. I think that if you are a protester, you should stick to the message and perpetuate your propaganda. And if you do that well enough, then
we do
one variation of the non-binary that we're trying to talk about is that maybe it's possible
thinking about getting the public on his
the
side.
police can discern the difference between people who are spreading a message that is very clear and those who are not spreading that message and spreading violence. I think you don't have to do that. I don't think you have to say, oh, violence bad, but...
Joe, would you agree that most movements, when looked upon historically, we tend to look at the ones that were peaceful in a more positive light, because they tend to, on average, lead to more change?
Liberals in the status quo like peaceful protests because they like to ignore the actual violence that exists in those movements. The civil rights.
100%. MLK. Let's real quick.
Am I still talking? Did I cut out for a second? Hang on.
It seemed like you paused.
You can skip me for now. I'm gonna fix my mic because I think.
No, you're good. You're good, Joe. Turns out I can still hear you.
Oh, perfect, great. I thought my mic was fucked up because people.
Joe looking like the hidden Super Smash Brothers challenger.
Again, protests and movements against the state and institutions are violent. And just because liberals in the status quo can paint it in such a way because of history and time,
I'm surprised they're being somewhat
doesn't mean that the reality didn't
to
exist,
their beliefs.
Right? These things are violent. You're gonna have to get used to that.
I just assumed they would all jump on me.
There is violence within.
I'm okay with violence. Believe me, I'm okay with violence.
It's multifaceted, dude. There's multiple it's not just like there's a peaceful movement that succeeds. There's always another side. There's always the more violent movement that scares the safe people, like a lot of the people on this panel, and then you have this you have this other group that shares the same sentiment as the more violent group that brings about a more peaceful change, and those are the people that get listened to and they get all the credit for all the change that happens. And that's just what's always happened. It's never, you think that people,
because the violent people actually set back the
no, listen, real quick. 2 seconds. 2 seconds. 2 seconds. 2 seconds. Promise. Wick. 2 seconds. And you 2 seconds. I promise. 2 seconds. Real quick.
No.
MLK.
It's ahistoric.
MLK. Right? Yeah. MLK gets all the fucking credit, and nobody wants to talk about Malcolm X and Stokely Carmichael.
2 seconds. Great. Okay, so Wiggle, you were challenged by
James
Erudite.
Kwame Ture.
And then I want to, Wiggle, and then Doobie. Doobie's been waiting.
Yeah, I would say, like, do you believe that during the civil rights movement that you would have so much support for black individuals at that point in time just because they were peaceful? If there was no violence at all, do you believe that in America we would have had the change that we got today without some level of violence?
Nope.
Absolutely. I think the major thing that MLK
and that's laughable.
all the time.
Continue.
Okay, try not to interrupt me if you can. The reason why MLK was really successful was he was abjectly against what made his protest so much more potent and powerful was despite the police violence, despite everyone being fucking horrific to them, they remained peaceful and they took it, and it highlighted the barbaric nature of what was going on, and it actually allowed a whole bunch of people to be like, holy shit, I can't be on the side of the they're literally standing there and like singing and putting like flowers on things, and the police are taking them down and assaulting, and it absolutely highlighted a very, very deep-rooted problem within our society.
We can see how the liberal propaganda won.
Yes, yes, 100%. How would you get that?
That's not fucking true.
The liberal propaganda didn't win because the civil rights movement actually progressed and civil rights were attained.
No, that was the whole point of ML. That was the whole point of them wearing suits and shit.
There's data to suggest that the riots and the violence actually set back the civil rights movement and actually had an influence. It wasn't the sole causal factor, but it was a factor that led to more redlining. It led to poverty in these, and it hurt these minority communities. And the peaceful, as Erudite so aptly put, the peaceful movement was able to succeed where, again, this isn't like I'm pulling
because
shit
there
out
was
of my
violence.
ass.
The peaceful movement succeeded.
Here's the problem.
It was in contrast.
When we equate this with civil rights, the problem is when we equate this with civil rights, you could justify violence. I can justify violence because violence.
How is this any different? The government is using violence against its people.
There are people different than the Jim Crow South. Come on, Scott. Are you fucking around, dude?
Dude, give it two. You know what? Give it 2 more years, and they'll be vaccinated and unvaccinated water fountains. Trust.
Oh boy! Wow. Okay. Let's go to Doobie. Let's go to Doobie. Doobie, you've been waiting.
Yes, sir. So, Wick tried to do the violence on both sides thing. He said, well, we're talking about one extreme versus the other, but you didn't give us anything in the middle, Wick. So I'm wondering, what's your solution? So these people are saying they're not going to leave until all the vaccine restrictions, all the mandates, any restrictions.
Pepto-Bismol, you can't hop on to a closed
the government's
panel.
saying they're not going to do that. The majority of the Canadians support more restrictions for these people.
It's like literally not possible.
Actually do support
you have to get invited to these. So you have to fight hard in debates to get invited to these.
What do you suggest? Right, the government
it's like not possible.
Half-Baked Takes said it earlier. As long as they're doing it in a peaceful manner, as long as they're not being overtly disruptive, and there are lines here that we can draw. We talk about the noise issue, and that's not up for me to decide. That's up to the people of Ottawa and the people of Canada to decide where those limits are. But yeah, if they want to just sit there and have their signs and do their protests, that's perfectly fine. That's allowed. That's good.
But almost 90% of the people of Ottawa want them gone.
Even if you're a minority of one person, you still should have the right to protest. You should have the right to be heard.
Okay.
I really don't care about the opinion.
Okay, that's weird. So they've protested. They've protested.
Minority rights.
Right? They've been heard. The majority of the country disagrees with them. The majority of the city that wants them gone. So you're saying that they should be allowed to squat there forever if they want to.
The majority of the country does not want them gone. Just Ottawa.
Scott, I double checked. If you can find me something else, something that says the majority of Canadians don't support more restrictions, majority of Canadians don't support mandates in some way, then
I'll get you the link.
I'm happy to read it. Right, but I just looked it up 3 times, right, and I can't find anything that supports what you're saying.
Wiggle, I also want to address a kind of an elephant that's awkwardly sitting in the room. So we keep talking about like liberals being limp-wristed and all these things, but I asked you a really direct question and you answered with a question.
What?
I prefer if you hold. I asked you for historical evidence and you said basically civil rights question mark rather than just like staking out historical, like talk me through, because I'm genuinely open to saying maybe there's some specific event you're thinking of within civil rights that I'm unaware of, but you just kind of said all of civil rights, which isn't it isn't an answer.
No, I was talking about the civil rights movement with like black individuals in the United States, but like it's
what
for me, it's a pretty
What specifically happened where you're saying? My question was basically,
Here you go, Dee Dee,
can
it's
you
in the chat.
achieve the same civil rights without violence?
No,
Give me a
like,
historical example of not doing that.
Yeah, so like this what you're describing is a very, very simple idea. There's like an idea of door in the face, foot in the door. And at the same time, there's always going to be within a movement people that take the door in the face approach, where they're going to be like problematic. They're going to be violent people.
Lucas, I can't fix the fact that Twitch is doing everything it can to keep my numbers down.
Door and
That's
face
not my problem.
broadly highly effective. Generally, it's recommended for most advertising firms that use
doesn't it make foot in the door more effective? That's the point. Is I'm saying that both of these things are tied together, where you guys try to remove one from the other.
But you know that foot in the door is the peaceful version, correct?
Yes, and I'm saying that
you
both
just said
of
it's
these
more effective.
I said that both of these need to exist simultaneously. Whereas you believe that
no
they
evidence
cannot.
to support that. There's literally zero evidence to support that. In fact, there's plenty of evidence.
What do you mean there's no evidence to support that?
There's plenty of evidence
last time you had a
to support.
Name the last peaceful movement. Changing the colors of like a Starbucks coffee cup?
The violence actually holds back and slows down the progress of peaceful movements. You're getting it twisted. You're actually saying the exact opposite
the average person
of actually true.
Do you think the average person, if the average person is having trouble, if the average person is having trouble where they are, like Natsu Erudite said, where the volume level is so high that there are members in their family who are suffering, who are in pain, and the average person is also having trouble like getting to work. We've seen like the animosity towards medical workers that are already again short-staffed and overworked. Do you think that is going to influence anybody to be on that protesting group side?
A lick?
I guess it's a no.
Oh no. Was that to you?
No, that wasn't to me.
So that was the wig, yeah.
It was the wig.
Wig.
Oh, me. Sorry, I thought you were talking to Wick. So this whole time, like, I'm sorry. Could you rephrase that? I just thought you were talking to Wick, so I didn't listen.
Yeah, call it Wiggle.
Yeah, sorry about that. It's Wig L, so I did a Wig W. It's just a joke.
Chaz Chop, get the fuck out with this. Can't get to
the
work
majority
shit.
of people in the city are being negatively affected in a very intense way, right? Like the volume level is hurting people with ear injuries or older people. That we've seen the animosity towards the medical workers who are already short-staffed and overworked. People are having tons of trouble getting around the city or even trying to get to work. Do you think that they are going to be more inclined to be on those protesters' sides because of that?
No. The people within that city, no. I don't believe that's the case. I think that this is successful. Like this is what those people set out to do. They wanted to be this disruptive, and that's the goal. They want there to be disruptive. I do believe that like there should be some level of temperance. I tend to take the half-baked takes approach versus like maybe the way Wick's positioning it, where like I do believe that like it's the point of the government. It's the state that should step up and create an avenue for these people to protest while also stopping these people from creating a higher level of harm. I just do not like the rhetoric about like that there should be no harm and there should be an elimination of harm, and like and then the idea of like poking at specific holes within.
I'm going to share actual studies from actual scientists that show a causal relation to there. This is actual data. You can look it up at your own time. I don't expect anyone to do this now. But this is actual data. This is actual historical evidence we have. And it's not just some Twitter.
Is it actually going to happen? Or are you going to
just make shit up? So I'm going to put this both in the private chat here, and I'm going to put it in the Twitch chat here. And viewers can look at it, and they can make, do they want to listen to the random dude on Twitch, or do they want to listen to, the social scientist, historical, thing? Which do you want?
Which realize that you were anti-established, intellectual, whatever, Joe. That had no idea that was like your stance.
I'm totally
fuck anybody who does any studies on anything. I guess.
Joe Louis do be in half.
Violence is an inevitable outcome of protest. The only way that you can, is there something you want to say, or can I keep going?
My bad.
You want to hit something to say, so go for it. I want to make sure you get it all out, and then I can go.
No, you can go. I'm sorry.
Fantastic. So we should try our best to alleviate the circumstances that could lead to outcomes that we deem undesirable. So Wick, I'm going to ask you directly, what is currently an undesirable outcome in the protests in Canada? And how do you think the Canadian government should alleviate those circumstances? So please, Marie, identify the outcome, identify the circumstance, and what you could do, what you think the Canadian government could do to alleviate that.
He literally just gave a page.
Erudite hit on it. They are looking at changing the laws for the noise levels in the city.
What is the outcome first, please?
Okay, outcome first is we want to reduce harm as much as possible to the people living in Ottawa.
That's not the outcome.
Oh my God, what am I supposed to do with this?
What is the current outcome that is happening? I'll walk you through it.
Okay, what is going on right now?
What is the current outcome that's happening in the protest?
Current condition is that, as I understand it, and again, I don't live there, so I can only go with what I read, as I understand it, is that they are being disruptive to transportation networks within the city, and there's a large amount of noise. As Stardust brought up, that there was some slurs and stones and blocking of emergency vehicles. All these things are not good. All these things need to change.
Great. So you said they're being disruptive towards transportation networks. So let's focus on that primarily. Okay. That is the outcome. What is the circumstance that is leading to that outcome?
When you say circumstance leading to that outcome, it means that they are using trucks and physically blocking access to important highways and thoroughfares and things like that.
So they're using trucks to block different passageways.
And people, things like that.
Okay. They're using trucks to block things. What could be an alleviation tool for that circumstance?
You mentioned it in your opening statement, creating no.
I want to know what you think, not what I think.
That's a good idea.
It's not Joe L today. He's Joe W.
What's the idea? I didn't hear anything positive. Just said I had a good idea. I don't know what the fuck that means.
You interrupted me as I was talking. You interrupted me, and then you're actually saying, "Well, I didn't hear anything." Well, yes, if you listened, you might. So if you create like a no parking zone or a no loitering zone in front of the Capitol building, Parliament there, I believe you mentioned. If I got it wrong, please correct me. And so that will allow access. Also, allowing access for emergency vehicles and making sure that there's a police presence to enforce that access, I think is very important.
Boring as fuck, right? So one of the things that we have to understand is that all outcomes are possible. If all outcomes are possible, then we have to look at the circumstances that can lead to outcomes that we deem undesirable. From there, we can try to alleviate the circumstances. And that's basically the core of like even things I'm going to argue if we ever get to that point. One of the problems I think is happening time and time again is that we're so like, oh, the outcome is bad, violence is bad. All right, cool. What's the circumstance that led to the violence? And then what can we do to alleviate that circumstance? But by and large, saying just be peaceful and the rhetoric of just being peaceful is not a circumstance alleviator. It's just a slogan that has no teeth to it. So something that you could say is a way to promote peaceful behavior within the thing that you're saying is maybe create some type of blockade, to create some type of no parking zone. Therefore, trucks aren't using their tools to block other individuals, and therefore you alleviate the outcome that is being disrupted towards transportation network. We can do this for every single outcome that exists for that protest, but apparently you gave us some homework. So
do you not think that there is any value to high-level rhetoric? That there's no value to talking things at a conceptual level? Do you not think that speaking on a high level of peaceful protests and using that and pointing that as our goal and our norm, that we can use that strategy to then inform our tactical decisions on the ground. Because when we have the goal of we want to do this peacefully, it informs the minutia and the day-to-day, the little things. How do we get this accomplished? If we use that as our mission statement, as a better word perhaps than a strategy, our mission statement, it informs how we act, it informs how we do things. I don't know why this is a hard concept to understand. You said a lot of things that sounded that you it's a lot of word salad you used, a lot of things that sounded high-minded but actually said nothing at all.
But it's oh, never mind. You wanted to speak, I'll go after you.
Sure. I just kind of wanted to ask Joe, based on like what you outlined of like, if all outcomes are possible, we have to figure out the outcomes that we want, and blah, 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 and we have a bunch of actionable behaviors that we could engage in. Couldn't one of those actionable behaviors that we engage in be disavowing violence?
Disavowing violence does not prevent the outcome of violence.
Yeah, but I'm not saying that violence won't necessarily happen, right?
So what can you do to alleviate the circumstance of violence?
Well, one thing we could do is
it's not about
what is
it's not about violence.
I went 2 steps deep. I went 2 steps. Is my mic not working again?
Why do you do that?
Sometimes people interrupt.
Actually, Erudite was speaking first. So actually, not so Erudite was speaking first. So maybe her mic's not working.
For sake of transparency,
I guess all our mics.
Can you guys stop being violent and peacefully approach Joe Lewis?
For sake of transparency, I've been having XLR problems all day. So I've been having 12 hours of teaching with my mic cutting in and out. So sometimes I talk and people can't hear me. I'm not trying to do it to be a cunt. I can be a cunt very easily, and Fabian knows that. So what were you saying before that weird interjection?
He's on my side today, so we're chill.
What I'm trying to say is one of the things that you could do if you don't want too much violence, right? If you want to put off violence as much as possible, is one of the actions a movement could choose to do would be to disavow violence. It could be to say, if you assault staff members, if you run up to people and rip their masks off their face, if you piss and shit on the street, if you deface statues, that's not something we side with. And within our own group, we will absolutely speak against that. Just like BLM regularly did with rioters. They said, absolutely not. We do not stand with this. We are not for rioters, and they don't represent our ideas. That is a good action to engage in. And I'm just wondering if that could be something that we do.
Is advocating for violence at its core. I don't understand how it would be good for violent actions to not be condemned by your movement.
I just want to say,
and nobody
quick,
is saying, nobody's saying that there's not going to be some amount of violence. It's inevitable in any one of these types of protests. But if you're trying to reduce the amount of it, then why wouldn't you just make a statement on it?
I just want to say real quick, I took a look at those studies. Now I just kind of did like a once over because he put 2 very large studies and I had to unlock one of them. But the first study is basically, for the most part, showing that riots and things like that destroyed the neighborhoods that the riots were in, and they were disproportionately in black neighborhoods. So yeah, riots do damage. Duh, we didn't really need a study for that. And the second one was mostly talking about agenda seeding and attempting to use positive influences so that the media can garner attention of those positive influences like sit-ins and things like that. And was specifically saying that when there's more violence, the police crack down more, and was using this as evidence that the violence doesn't work.
I want to quote because you're misrepresenting that second one.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of what happens when you put like 2 30-page studies in and then just say like
abstract,
it proves me right, and like talking about like, so please give me the quote.
Okay. Protester-initiated violence, by contrast, helped move news agendas, frames, elite discourse, and public concern towards social control. In 1968, using rainfall...
they're using rainfall as a system so that they can look at property, so that they can look at other things that are not caused by
and it goes on,
violence.
But that's the key there.
Right, but it does nothing to address any of the topics that people were bringing up to you that were clearly going over your fucking head.
Are you missing the point here?
No,
am
Wick,
I not
Wick,
communicating clearly?
No, Wick, you're just not understanding. It went over your head, so I'm explaining it for you.
I don't think so. I think
Can you explain to me, Scott, what you heard me say? That might be helpful, because I genuinely want to give you the benefit of the doubt that you are trying to understand this. I'm not trying to be a dick. What did you hear me say, and then what are we not understanding?
I'm talking about what Wig and I were trying to explain to Wick, not per se what you were saying, because I'm going with this
study. On board though, so I don't know if I stand by everything, but I think we've been pretty consistent.
That's fine, but again, I'm talking about what Wig and I were saying to Wick. But yes,
okay,
if you want to
let me repeat back to you what I heard you say, and maybe.
Why would you repeat back to me what I said when I'm trying to explain it to you?
Why don't you just explain the study?
Right. So the issue here, right, is that what we were saying is that peaceful protests work in conjunction with violent protests and have been so.
But that's not true. That again.
Name one movement. Please name one movement that was.
I just read it to you. Are you not listening?
Name one.
Protest initiated by.
Name one.
By contrast, help move news.
Name one. Name one.
I'm fucking doing it.
No, you're not. You're just repeating the study, which isn't what I'm asking.
Well, here the way that this works, Scott, is that
don't use scientific studies if you can't fucking understand it.
For him to explain it to you, you have to actually give him some space to speak. You know, so
he's repeating the same quote.
Fabian, you're not being an honest actor here. And what
you can call me dishonest, but you don't know what the fuck you're doing.
Very clearly data. You can say, well, I don't like that data.
Oh my God, God, fucking trust the science over here. Doesn't understand the science he's quoting.
Or that it misses the point is frankly dishonest.
No, what's dishonest is what's dishonest. I would call you dishonest, but honestly, I don't think you're smart enough to understand the studies that you're quoting.
What is this Dunning-Kruger effect shit that's going on right here?
I don't know, man. Wick, I'm looking at it.
I've been trying to wonder that, man. It's like if I go around and I start beating people's kneecaps so that like they pay me money, and then another person comes around and says, hey, we're a collective group that we'll take a little bit of your money and we'll prevent your kneecaps from being broken. That force of nature is ridiculous. They're gonna be really successful. they're
exactly.
Gonna be peaceful.
Well, let's go to Doobie.
Like this is necessary, but it's not. That's just not true.
Let's go to Doobie and have big takes.
Okay, so at first I gotta agree with Wick. I think you are misunderstanding the study, misrepresenting the study even, and I don't think it's fair to say that Wick, to complain that it's 30 pages long and you don't really have the time to go through it and then speak as an authority on it at the same time. That doesn't make any fucking sense, right? So we know that you can look at the study, you can read it again if you'd like, but you can just look at what happened with BLM. Right, we know that when BLM protests got violent,
you didn't even look at the fucking study, did you?
This was Yes, I did. I've read that study before.
Okay.
Right. So what they reference is how nonviolent protests, right, drove media and news coverage and public opinion toward positive opinions on civil rights. Right. Whereas the opposite, right, violent protests, right, drove public opinion toward control, wanting to shut down the protests, right? This, which is obviously like when the protests about civil rights, shutting down the protests is going to be a negative thing for the civil rights activists, right? So again, you can look at the BLM protests when they got violent.
Would you like to address what we were saying?
Public opinion turned against them, right? And they became less popular as a result. Now, it is true that when you have a large protest movement, violence is in some ways inevitable. You can't control every person, right? Of course.
So, do you want to address our original argument? Because now you're just defending the study, and again, you haven't showed me
because you disagreed with the study without understanding what the fucking study was. But if you want to go back to your original argument, if you can just make it really quickly for everybody here, that'd be really useful.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna repeat again because what you just said is no different than what I said, and I'm asking you to show either in this study or in any way, shape, or form how you can have the conversation around the question that we were asking or the thing that we were positing, which is that you have a violent protest does not happen in isolation. It's not like the civil rights movement was like Jews and blacks were both being disproportionately treated poorly, and they were having two different movements, and one was peaceful and one was violent, and the peaceful movement succeeded and the violent one didn't. What you have is a civil rights movement where there is an enmeshment between both the peaceful and the violent protests, where they're working in tandem. It's the same thing with the Vietnam protests, where you had the New Left, right?
Okay, but
you
I
had
think
communists
I understand
working with
now.
liberals, right? And that study is not addressing that.
Okay, I understand now, but I don't think anybody here has disagreed with what you just said. But maybe they've disagreed with the framing of it, because what you just said sounds a lot like they work in tandem toward the goal of passing whatever policy
Right, they
or
work
these
together.
we're looking for.
Yeah, and we're
Right,
just
but
saying
what we're saying is that the violent side actually was counterproductive.
Right.
But you're trying to
that's what I
separate
disagree
the
with.
two
Here's the question.
without
Here's the
without
question that
doing
may be
so.
But that's
for
what the
us to
data
answer.
suggests. That's what the
So-
data
so-
Oh my God,
yeah,
you
so
guys
it is
literally
your
don't
answer.
understand basic
No,
fucking
I get that
science.
You're an ideological
They're
advocate,
together.
Fabian.
You
Are
can't look
advocates
at the
made less
data
effective by
by
agitators or
separating them.
do advocates require violent agitators to move their movement forward, or advocates can they be effective
I don't believe
on
that,
their own with a peaceful
I don't
engagement?
believe that they have to have this. I just believe that this is the most effective way to think about things, because there's largely going to be violence. Like, yes, you can have a completely non-violent movement that gets something. Like when I was memeing and I said, okay, I want to change the color of Starbucks coffee cups. I don't need to kill people or have some sort of violence to have a violent campaign that's successful. All right, I could just, if I wanted to change I wanted to get someone fired because I thought they said something anti-Semitic.
Yeah,
and then
Casimir, I know.
had a whole
I'm actually
campaign against
saving that
That could
for
be non-violent, and I could get a
for
whole
the
bunch of people on
in-closing
board.
statement.
But when
Sometimes
we're
you have
talking
to-
about movements
you have
that
to
are
crush
larger,
the
it's like
argument, like,
Doobie
in
was
the
saying
middle
and
of
others
the-
had said before, that there's going
in
to
the
be a degree of
conversation, and
violence.
sometimes you want to do it
And it
later.
makes sense that that violent part of your movement, that you would distance yourself from that in order for you to be more appealable. So when you're looking in the situation that's described here, it doesn't look like anybody is going to like them. Even if they were to be quieter at this point and they were to disavow violence, it doesn't really seem like that would change people's minds about this movement because of what happened in the past. It would make sense that another splinter of this movement would form, and then those people would be really appealable because of this movement being successful and being disruptive.
Okay, Wiggle. Okay, so Wiggle. So what
Do you
you
have
said
evidence of this? Do you have any evidence of this at all?
No, I'm like,
This just feels like you're just creating these fictitious ideas of what maybe might be ideal, which is nice, and maybe we can
I'm
theorize
not Canadian.
about ways.
I don't know.
That has
what the people
nothing
of
to do
Ottawa-
with it.
we don't need to-
Protests historically are about
No,
human
but I'm saying I
beings
don't know
and
what the people in
human
Ottawa.
psychology.
I don't know what the people in Ottawa
I just think
would say against that. Like I don't
Okay,
know.
but
what-
Wiggle.
How do you
we
get
don't-
to
we don't need
assert
go
the
like
opposite?
Some hypothetical or an ideal, right? So we have somebody on the panel right now who said that they should block off the port. They should cripple the economy of Canada, and then when if the police come by and try to stop this, they should resist the police with weapons. Right.
Yes.
So Wiggle, do you support that?
Nah, me personally, no,
Yeah,
I don't
I
know
asked
enough
you.
about what the people in Canada want to say that.
No,
Maybe if I
no,
did,
I'm
I
asking
would.
you. So Scott's
I
not
literally
Canadian,
just
as far as
answered you.
know.
I said I
Okay.
don't know enough about the people in Canada to talk about.
But would you?
You're literally talking about an American saying that yes,
Thanks,
yes,
thanks,
you
Five
should block
Cows,
off and
19.
cripple
That
the
feels like a
GDP of
dog whistle to
Canada
something
and
I
make
don't understand.
all of the people in Canada suffer.
I
for
feel like I'm,
something
like,
that I
What if
saying
this was
it,
happening
and
in,
you're sitting
what if this
somewhere
was
like
happening
he
in
said
America? Would you agree with it then?
that's all it took.
Wait, you have
Yes.
to think about it.
Yeah, that's how it should be.
No, wait. So wait, hold on.
Such a
So,
arbitrary
Wiggle.
line in the sand.
Wow.
As a side note,
This is
as a
protests
side note,
about
There's a
human
thing called
psychology.
principle.
Wait a second.
Two
Wait a
things.
second.
Two
Do you
things.
think it's
Yeah.
What? If it happened in America? What?
No.
Two things.
Wait. You guys think it's
Whoa.
confusing that I would
No.
think
No,
about it
thinking
more
about
about
it,
my
I
own
want-
country?
No,
I'm trying
it's
to
my own
compliment
country.
you here. I'm trying to compliment Wig. The fact that you sat back and I'll consider that. Bravo. I
Don't
may
say that.
disagree with
Okay,
you
you
totally,
did.
but bravo for actually thinking about things. That's a great thing.
Bravo
I
for
commend
doing
that.
the bare-
That's a
the
great
bare
thing
minimum
to
that
do.
Everybody does.
Second,
Holy fuck.
Everybody does not do that.
no,
Most people are
Hurry up,
dug in.
hurry up.
Most people
Well,
dig their fucking
offline
heels in
can
the
do
sand.
that, but we're dealing with a lot of variables online, right?
I'm
Like
sorry that I
latency,
acknowledge
shitty
that.
mics.
I'm sorry to acknowledge that people in different countries have different beliefs. So,
No,
yes,
no.
if I'm in America, I'm going to be thinking differently than what I think Canadians should do because I'm not Canadian. And so in America, if you ask me the situation, it's very different. America's a different country. I'm not going to advocate for what happens in Canada
So as
on the
soon as
basis
it
of what I
happens
want
in
as
a
an
different
American.
place, it's completely different.
It's very different. Yes.
Wiggle. Okay, wait, hold on. Wiggle. So it's troubling to me that you had to think about that, right? So
I didn't even get a chance. That was 2 seconds.
You said you had Okay, you shouldn't even have had to do that, because what we're talking about is a bunch of truckers deciding to cripple the economy of the United States in that situation. So what Scott said is that if the police show up to try to remove these truckers that are crippling the economy of the United States, the truckers should resist the police with violence, right? Just shoot them, right? So Wiggle, the fact that you even had to think about that is troubling.
Yeah, because of the level of success. Like, if there was a movement like that in the United States, you think it would be successful? You're the same individual within this panel who said it would be like, yes, it does.
Why does the outcome matter here? If you're using violence and killing other people to get your ends, you really need to get the end you want. You really should take a good hard look at yourself.
Wick, thank you so much for becoming an anarchist today on this panel.
There are things we should not do.
Wait, can I
agree? That's why we're against the state.
Look at the situation that we're in the United States right now, where we had individuals.
Someone got good intel. That is something we should not do.
Look at the situation we're in
right
now.
Facts.
I need to get to
radical disability.
Forever.
Get your homework done.
You have any?
No, you're good. Keep this going.
Get your papers ready.
Everybody. I'm fine.
Look at the situation.
I'm
look at the situation right now.
Wiggle, then Joe, then Stardust, okay?
Look at the situation right now, where we had a year ago, we had January 6th occur. That was very violent, and then the whole country was in agreement in the United States on that this was a terrible thing. This should never happen, and they were going to condemn all of this. And now, within several months later, because they didn't condemn it as harsh as they could have, now you have a groundswell of support in one particular party in the United States, the Republican Party, for the actions that happened during January 6th. There's a lot of people that committed violent acts that day, and they've gotten more institutional power. So it's I don't know how you're going to tell me that I have to ignore this and believe that I should just always not see violence as some sort of option. Yes.
Do you not think that the right wing has condemned that though? The violence? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Thanks. I think that there's some concerns about actual scientific literacy going on, things like generalizability seems to not be broadly understood, as well as things like outliers, right? Sometimes you do have outlier cases where things happen, right? Well, that's part of why statistics are informative, and why the study that he's showing us is informative and indicative about what seems to work within protests and what doesn't.
Yeah. So what are you gonna say to the outliers that are unsuccessful? That those people should just suck it up? Imagine if your data,
no, I think you're still missing my point, right? The idea is we're talking more at a meta level about what makes effective protests and advocacy.
And do you think that the individuals in a specific instance,
but they don't inform what broadly seems to be the most effective strategy? Of course, shit happens. But when you have a large amount of data that shows that broadly these seem to trend things in a really good direction, we shouldn't just disregard that because we're being like our mom and we're but there's this one lady I know who said this thing, right? Or that there's this one circumstance that happened. What we do is then empirically we would collect those outliers and try to see if maybe that they're a disparate group.
Do you believe that this movement will be successful if it tells people tomorrow that, hey, we're going to stop being as loud, and we're not going to do we're not going to have a blockade, and then they all went home?
Significantly higher chance of success.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
I would chalk that up
100%.
to fucking they would, because then the protests can actually keep going and the PR stays in their favor.
And the entirety of the city
millions of dollars
hate them.
So
the entirety of the city, if the people who live there absolutely fucking hate these people, right? Then they're not really going to get anything done, are they?
And let's be clear, they have some moral ground to stand on when it comes to things like what happened to them during the GoFundMe thing. Even Joe said that was something that concerns him. And I don't want to speak for Joe here, and I won't.
That should concern everybody.
It should concern everyone.
Here's the deal,
and
guys.
So if they
I'll get the vaccine.
You
fucking leave me alone. And did that work?
And they
no.
Use
so
that
stupid me.
As kind of their PR front, look at what they did to us. They're going to get much more sympathy. They're going to get from all sides in the issue here. It's going to be more successful. Now, will it 100% be effective and work? I don't know. I can't tell the future, but they have a significantly higher chance.
Yeah, and then what stops individuals from saying, "Look at the violence that
guys
did happen.
can't go to the
Look at these
Capitol?
people; they're advocating for this.
Guys can't
and look
have
at the
fun
damage that they've
anymore?"
already caused."
But there's a difference between look at the violence that did happen and look at the violence that's happening.
But what
Did
stops
happen,
another
hey, we fixed that
movement?
shit.
I mean,
But what stops? Why does it have to be
and we
one
don't care.
movement? Why does
What
it
you
have to be
say in
one?
response-
Yeah.
what you can say in response to that is clearly they don't support the broader movement doesn't support that because they came out and they condemned it and they tried to prevent that, right? But if that doesn't even happen, then it's like, well, yeah, they really don't give a fuck about the citizens who reside in that city.
So what if there's a splintering within the group that says, "Hey, we're the ones that condemn that stuff, and we're the rational people within this movement. We condemn those violent acts. That's the larger movement. That's why we
give me
split
a
apart."
link
Do you believe that they
to
will
them
be
condemning
successful?
violence, please?
Yes, because they're denouncing, but the
Does anyone have a
violent
link
group would
to that?
naturally hold that group back unless they denounce them as
Oh my God.
strongly as possible. That's what the evidence is showing.
That's why you have to disassociate yourself, or you're going to get lumped in with the violence. Unless your
I appreciate
movement,
that.
unless your movement is based in violence, then you probably should be denouncing the violence that occurs because you want to keep peaceful protest peaceful for the positive PR. I can't believe that we're even having to argue about.
Cholos.
He's talking about the distance that Democrats do to black people who advocate for police brutality and other types of changes in society. Mike, I have a question for you.
Go for it.
And maybe this is where we'll find like where you're coming from. Okay, are you familiar with Ashada Shakur?
Not terribly, unfortunately.
People
I'll
are
give you a
saying that they
TLDR. She was arrested in my state,
guys
and
can't go to
allegedly
the
she murdered
Capitol?
a state trooper. The
Guys can't
medical
have
evidence
fun
suggested
anymore?
that she had no part in the murder of this trooper at all. New Jersey state troopers tortured her in police custody, and then the eventuality was that she was sentenced to life imprisonment up in North Jersey. The Black Liberation Army decided to put matters into their own hands and break into the facility that she was in and directly take her out. And now she's in Cuba. Do you agree with the Black Liberation Army's actions there? Was that a successful example of direct action?
If how you framed it is what actually happened, then I think that they have it's understandable. I would have looked at other means to do so before doing that. But again, I don't know. I don't know enough about the situation. This is something I can't really comment on because I don't know the situation.
Well, I just explained it to you. So let's
But okay, you gave me one view of it.
I have a strong feeling that your framing of this might be a little skewed.
Yeah,
or
like I don't.
Story
Like,
might be a
and this
little
is a key here.
different
This is
than
a
what
key
you
here.
framed it.
Like
giving an
Joe,
example of...
I do not trust your framing of the issue 100%, and I shouldn't. And you shouldn't trust my framing of issues 100%.
Because that lady's
you
a
just
cop
shouldn't
killer.
do that. You should look into things yourself. You shouldn't just take things at face value. You should do deep, like, wow, that's concerning. What you said, wow, I want to look into that. And I will do that on my own time. And perhaps, and it's very possible that what you said, 100% true, that maybe you're understating the case. But I don't know. And I cannot, it would be irresponsible of me, because I don't know, to act like I do. And that's a problem we have on these panels, is people who don't know what they are talking about act like they do know what they are talking about. And I try very hard not to do that.
So great.
And let's be real, Joe, you have a very long history of dishonestly framing things like this, right? So this woman did kill a cop.
I'm still having an exchange with Doobie Wick. I'm still having an exchange with Wick Doobie. I'll let you
may continue.
Respond. Thank you very much. So, Wick, let's say everything I just laid out to you, you did the research, and that was true.
Doesn't look like there's.
This is an example of direct action. You described you would look into other ways. So what is another way that you would advocate
being arrested,
or in this case,
charged.
a political prisoner to be let out of a facility?
Very reliable information.
We have appeals process. We have we can go
people
to the
from the
government,
movement were not associated.
Joe Biden could
and that offenses related to property damage
there are many
and just an
different
assault
ways
this morning.
Direct violence. There are many different ways.
by agitators
they may not work.
were witnessed
They may not be effective.
and reported
I don't know.
by a
we
trucker
don't know,
and one of
did
our
they try them? I don't think they did. But I don't know.
Well, they did.
They have.
They
They
did.
have. I know.
They did. I mean, that's why the poster's on my wall.
I can't. I honestly can't see. Like,
There's no way that we could have known.
So-
you didn't even like outline that in your framing.
So
I'm
just-
glad that they did.
Just for a quick little update on this discussion about calling out and violence and stuff. I hadn't seen this, and I was trying to get my chat to do it. Some of the acts that these people are referencing, that the media is referencing, the reason they're not, quote, calling out this violence is because they're saying that they have records that they will release, that it was truckers from the convoy that called it out and called the police, and that these were not actually done by people in that regard, and that's why they're not denouncing those acts of violence, is because they were the ones that called the police and got those individuals arrested and other acts of property damage. So the lack of calling out of violence is because they believe that it was not actually their movement at all that did that, and that instead the media is simply calling out crime that is occurring in the same area, and so there's a dispute about whether or not they actually did it.
That's the same damn thing, saying, hey, we didn't do this, this other group did. It's the same damn thing.
Right, well, what they're saying is this other group is doing it, we called the police, we will provide that documentation, but the media is trying to blame it on us.
That would be denouncing violence, which has been our point the entire time.
Which is great. I just wanted to give an update. I recently learned that they were approached and asked to stop honking, and I'm not confident this is just like grapevine, but it sounds like they more or less have stopped doing that. Again, if that's what they do, I'm instantly more favorable towards their position because they're not like actually damaging people's ears anymore. So I'm like, great, that's good. I'm now immediately more in favor of the protest. Much more sympathetic to their plight. Because, like, Scott, I think what you're raising of, like, concerns about, like, there are actual concerns about, like, how long do these mandates go? How long does this continue, right? There are legitimate mental health problems that are seriously, like, a massive concern. And I'm definitely sympathetic to those things, right? The problem is that, like, when we're talking about what makes effective protest, we have to be kind of insular and focused around that. But like this idea of like maybe that there can be some good come of it, right? Things like better mental health access, things like certain individuals being able to like access economic needs and stuff like that. Those are all good things. And I'm not even saying I'm inherently opposed to everything within the protest. I'm opposed to protest, not denouncing violence.
I appreciate you trying to extend the olive branch, but I'm against them on principle, not based off of a period of time. And I don't think that the positive things that would come from it would be more government programs. But I understand your position.
Okay. Well, I guess we can just end that here.
Also, well, there's one thing I did want to talk about GoFundMe because a lot of people have talked about it. So just real quick, GoFundMe was approached by police and spoken to several times by the state, right? So this idea that it's like completely GoFundMe's fault in this situation, when it's obviously the pressures of the cathedral coming down on GoFundMe and that there's a mixture of that, I think it's important that we understand that this is, of course, them trying to avoid pressure and avoid issues when dealing with the Canadian government, because the Canadian government doesn't want these people funded. But you can go to you can go to Give, Send, Go if you would like to support the cause, and they've already gotten $5.5 plus million.
You shouldn't go there. That's actually like a virus link. Do not go there.
Fabian, you could just say that they should probably directly support the individuals who are there on the ground. They don't have to go through some like third party application to do so. That's how they got fucked by GoFundMe. I think we probably agree here though.
Yeah, I mean, but not everybody is that skilled at like touching grass and knows what communities to work with or how to actually do that. For some people, it's as easy.
I mean, there's a woman literally giving out dominoes to people at the convoy. I think one of the problems is that people want to look for like the easy way to contribute and keep their kind of their hands off from it. So I think that there is
I mean, a lot of conservatives are scared to have their political opinions and things like out there public too. I mean, for some people, it's easier because of their job and things like that to just give some money, and that's what.
But I do agree. Privilege in that aspect.
I mean, I do agree. I mean, I don't know if it's privilege to be afraid to lose your job.
It's pretty disgraceful that people would fund these jackasses.
Of course, it's privilege. Like you wouldn't acknowledge that there's a privilege to saying like, oh, I don't want to be there on the ground for these individuals. Well, give them monetary support. Like, there's a level of privilege to that. Like, for some people,
I mean, but we're specifically talking.
Even in your framing, Fabian, these are like lives on the line and individuals like livelihoods and stuff like that. So I would imagine that people are really passionate about that. They would be on the ground and helping them. But
what if you don't have the privilege? What if you don't have the privilege? What if you don't have the privilege of enough money to go to these things?
I would love.
What if you can't afford a fucking plane ticket? What if you can't afford a hotel? What if you can't afford to do all these things?
Your job?
That seems like
to be able to go to these protests on the ground is a privilege because a lot of people just can't take time off their jobs. They cannot sacrifice their work because they're working 2 jobs. They can't take a day off.
I'm not sure.
That is a privilege to be able to go to these places.
I'm not sure this is worth arguing, and not at the very end. We had like a little consensus going on. Then it's like, no, fuck you and your GoFundMe. Okay, all right. Well, let's
just wanted people to focus on the real problem, the state.
Exactly.
Yeah, they have a right to protest. Going there isn't a privilege. It's a privilege to be able to be in a position to go there. The act of going there is your right.
You just watched a clip from our Twitch channel, Fabian Liberty. If you like content like this, please like and subscribe here on YouTube, or go ahead and give us a follow on twitch.tv/Fabian Liberty.